forgiveness, there's a quote that talks about how once you finally are able to forgive not only others, but most importantly forgive yourself, you're able to fly. So it's kind of like a grudge against yourself, expectations against yourself or others. They act like weights on your shoulders, or they might even manifest in tension if you have neck pain, all that. And one thing I found was that when I was finally able to forgive others and forgive myself, it's very freeing. So it is freedom physically and mentally.
I agree.
Yes, for me, there's always two phases of forgiveness. Forgiveness means forgiveness and forget it about it. Forgiveness and move on.
My mind agrees with it.
Yes.
Yes. This process of forgiveness is not just liberating, but it's healing. And it is such a valuable practice that I think we as humans should try to make a habit of utilizing every day.
In my life, I believe in it. I believe in forgiveness. It helps me move.
I think it's easy to, if you're in a difficult relationship with others or yourself, this always applies to both other people and yourself, but it's easy to play the blame game or the victim game, kind of they did that and now I'm like this, like that caused me to suffer, that caused me pain. And what I like to think is that everyone's acting and living like they know how, whether it's because of how they were raised or what their environment was growing up. That's all they know, and that's the best they can do. And I like to believe that everyone, for the most part, is doing the best that they can do. So when you realize that that was the best they could be, they didn't know more, and they didn't know how what they were doing was affecting you in a way. So kind of separating that attachment of expecting others to act like what you think is ideal, and just focusing on yourself. And forgiveness is that too. It's kind of letting go of any attachments with other people or your past, and coming into the present and coming into yourself and be like, that's them. What happened was what was difficult was them, and now I have me and I'm here, and we can let go of any attachments with them.
Usually, as I've gotten older, how I forgive is by realizing that people make decisions based on what's happening for them on that moment, and that maybe in a different time, different place, they would not have. Because a lot of times in my life, I've made decisions that were wrong, but it was based on the information I had at that time. So when you think that people are raised differently from you, have different backgrounds, different religious beliefs, everything that makes up that person is going to be different from you, and that you can't change how they feel or how they think, but you can sort of have the mindset to put yourself in their place. And if you can think that maybe at that time they were maybe not in the greatest place in their lives, and that's why maybe they hurt you, then it's much easier to forgive. And if you hold on to these things, as I sometimes used to, I find that it eats at you, and then it affects all areas of your life. And you don't want to grow with that. And now having a child, I don't want that always to be the example I set for her. So while now I will still allow myself to get mad and upset about something when someone hurts me, after a couple of days, I start to think about, okay, but where was this person in their life, that moment, that day, what was happening for them, and then it makes it easier to forgive.
Forgiveness is healing. It's sometimes you don't need to forgive only for other person. Sometimes you also need to forgive yourself. That's why for me, forgiveness is healing. It's not only forgiveness as moving forward or forgiveness as forgetting things. Forgiveness is a healing process because why? It's not only forgetting your enemy, forgetting all the things that happened to you before, and forgiveness on yourself so that you could move forward. Whoever, whatever, or whoever you're afraid with, you need to ask that one first. Forget about that thing, and then next, forget about yourself, because you cannot forgive someone if even you, as yourself, you cannot forgive yourself. So, always God, yourself, and then also that person that hurt you or do something against you.
Before it was like forgive and forget. And then as I got older, I've realized I don't forget. So then when I went into business and I started to get to know the business world and how you need to forgive a lot of situations and a lot of people, and thinking that maybe there's two sides to each story, and try my best as I was growing to forgive the person and reflect inside of myself to see what it is that I've done wrong in a situation. So I self-reflect and took a lot of self-help books to help me forgive others. So that's what I did. A lot of self-help.
In 1962, my dad left us. It took me from 1962, well, till I was old enough to search for him. Basically from 1973 until 1985, I looked for my father. Then I gave up. And when I first met my father, it was purely coincidental. Like I'd given up. And put it this way, he was not a good man. But I saw through his persona of being tough, arrogant, so on and so forth. And it's hard for me to forgive prejudice. And my father was prejudiced against my wife because she was Native. And it took years, but I forgave him. Before his death, we made peace. And that's forgiveness to me. And I was never a forgiving person before. And I figured life's too short to carry grudges. And it's easier to try and, how do I say it? It's easier to look into somebody's heart and see what they're really about before you make judgment on how they look at people. You have to know their background. You have to know where they came from. It's if you carry a grudge, you're carrying hate. And hate is not good for anybody. So it's easier to forgive somebody and move on with your life than it is to carry a grudge.
My understanding of like having to forgive others, I had to really, really go deep into it, and does not mean like that whatever they did is acceptable. It means that to forgive is to let go, understanding that that person or those people are coming from their own experiences of unresolved issues, of experiences that they are still carrying, and they're still filtering, and they're still learning to process, right? And for some other people, they don't feel like they have a responsibility for having to take care of those issues. They feel like someone else has wronged them, and so they have a way of finding excuses to validate their behaviors whether it are aggressive or selfish or whatever, or just not nice, right? So for me, having to forgive others was trying to at first put myself in their shoes, which was not always the easiest, but you know, we are all human. We all have feelings, we all have experiences, we all have traumas. And understanding that we can come from a place of compassion, right? And to some degree empathize. But that doesn't mean that what they may have done to us is acceptable or tolerable. And so for me, I can forgive someone, but without having to condone it. Because if I carry that, if I carry any kind of bitterness, what happens is it starts to eat me, starts to erode my sense of self-worth, my confidence, and my sense of feeling what is just and right in this world, right? So forgiveness means to let them take responsibility, and for me to really look at my own self. Did I deserve that behavior, or did I deserve to be treated that way? Have I done anything wrong to attract some kind of negative energy to me? So all of these are like processing internal beliefs that I have about myself, and then validating or not validating, my own position in that whatever was happening there. And then when I just let it go, then I can move forward. I can move on without having to carry any kind of bitterness, any kind of poison, because it can literally eat you internally and out, right? And so this is also what I've learned is like, say with diseases like cancer or some other diseases, I've noticed that people who carried so much bitterness, so much resentment, so much lack of forgiveness, what they did is they make themselves sick, really, really sick. So cancer is like a disease of stress and anger and internalized resentments, and it's an extreme reaction to how the body responds to being unable to forgive and being unable to, and like I said, it doesn't mean condoning bad behavior. It means just letting it go and preventing it from ruining your life, really, like preventing it from having a place in your being where it starts to erode your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual balance.
I think forgiveness for me, it dawned on me one time. I was one of these people that, if you didn't like me or something, like, I play competitive sports, like it was always like, I gotta get that, and it would burn me up all the time, and it would eat me up. And then I heard somebody told me, forgiveness is not about making, like if somebody did something wrong to you, it's not acknowledging that is okay. You're not saying it's okay. Forgiveness is for you to move on so that you don't have to get stuck in that rut or that feeling that a person might put you in. And I said, and I try to learn that, because when light went on for me, I couldn't help but tell other people, like, you hold a grudge, don't do it. It does nothing good for you. Because if you think about it, the other person you're holding a grudge with, they may not even know it. They may not even know you're upset with them. They piss me off, that's fine. I'm not saying that what they did was right or wrong. It's not saying anything right or wrong. It's that now that I got it, it's happened. I'm moving to the next step and I've let that go. I've forgiven them because it helps me move on. That's the only thing I learned about forgiveness, and I find that as I learned that when I got older, I find it's so quickly to do that. I could be angry for a second, but just 10 seconds later, I gotta let it go, forgive, and move on. Otherwise, I get stuck, and it's me that loses. So that's what I believe in forgiveness. And I think sometimes when I learn a lesson like that, I can't help but tell people, and maybe they're not receptive in that moment, but maybe 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 months from now, the light might go on in their head, because it didn't go on for me for a long time. I mean, I think I heard it from people, forgive, but I never did. I always thought that I was right, and if I forgive, that means what they did was okay. No. You're forgiving so that you can move on. It's almost like a selfish thing, but I realize it, and it helps me.
That's a difficult question. I think everyone can think of a person or people that this question would apply to. And I really think it's a matter of if you're ready. First of all, if you know deep down you've truly forgiven, I think that could mean you're ready. But in order to not kind of fall into the same situation again, I like to think that boundaries are very important. So if you're ready, if you've really forgiven yourself and others, and you know how to set boundaries, then I think I would let someone or the situation or a place back into my life.
I try to keep everybody in my life unless they are extremely toxic. I might change, like if this person, for example, was a great part of your life, like you were in a relationship with this person, but they were toxic, you don't want that. You don't want to stay in that relationship, but maybe you can find something about them that you can still be friends with, and realize that when two people are together, whether it's friends, whether it's husband and wife, that we all have a role, and that sometimes, like, what is our 50% of that relationship? Like, what have we done that sometimes brings some of this in, right? So if we can look inward sometimes and say, okay, did I do anything that led to this, or was this just totally unfounded? And if it says unfounded, then you don't want that person in your life in the same way, but you can also still be kind, be respectful, and as long, like, I normally try to keep it that way. Like, even people that I no longer am best friends with, I still try to be respectful and kind to them. It just might not be as close.
For me, yes. Why? Because once you forgive someone, it means you are forgiving everything and letting go on what all bad things happen. But you forgive, but I always have this, don't forget. You forgive things, you move forward, but it doesn't mean that you forget already what happened. It means you just need to be more careful this time so that it will not happen again and it will not affect your relationship again on that person.
I've done that in many different scenarios in life, you know, like the in-laws or best friends or friends that betrayed you or you thought they betrayed you. And then I also realized with time that when I first said my mind, in my mind I said, yes, I do forget. But you know how people say forgive and forget? You don't forget, you know? Your mind doesn't forget, your heart doesn't forget, your soul doesn't forget. So now at 49 years of age, I've learned to or started to forgive myself. So it's not me forgiving other people. I started to forgive myself. As Maya Angelou, she has a quote saying, I wrote it down, forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know before you learned it, which is something so powerful because we're so hard on ourselves, on judging ourselves, and you carry the pain, and you keep saying, I've forgiven this person, and it's okay that they are in my life, but I didn't know how to dig into my subconscious and to just forgive myself, to try and step into my next chapter in my life and my next experience. So yeah, so it's a lot of me forgiving myself more than forgiving others, because I have no control of how they think or how they operate and why they did what they did at the time that they did it. So yeah. My boundaries also, all my regrets in my life is my gut feeling. So again, it's myself. So what I've done is pay more attention to my gut feeling, and all my regrets in my life is when I didn't listen to myself. So it's not me allowing them in, but I do protect my circle, my soul, which I haven't connected. I've just recently connected with my soul. I was all mind, and just recently I'm like, no, my heart is something else and my soul is something else. And my journey this year especially is protecting my soul and just keeping my positive energy and my positive souls close to my circle. And the others I just dismiss into the world. They're not my thing. I don't hate, I don't love, I'm more selfish with myself now. So it's really hard because it's painful, but don't listen to your conscience mind so much.
Going back to the father thing again, for me it was a toxic situation. So for years I never saw him. We never went to visit. So we removed ourselves from that toxic situation. My whole family, and you know, my kids, his grandkids, his great-grandkids. And so, in my opinion, he missed out. But we had to remove ourselves until he was ready to make the move to make that situation better for us. For me, I've left many of jobs because of a toxic environment, political, otherwise, or just personality clashes. I usually try to work through them, but if I can't work through them, I will remove myself from the situation.
It really depends on how serious something is. As I monitor, connections and relations with people, I'm told, I'm advised internally and spiritually to step back, because everyone is at their own place of learning, and their place is in a different place. They're going in a different direction from where we are. And the more we advance, sometimes faster, like more spiritually, the more we get ahead. And it's not to say that we are better than anyone, no. It's just that they are choosing to maybe like keep their eyes covered, right? And they don't want to see some things. And in fact, I've tried to share some things that might help them to open up more, but it's everyone's choice to be where they're at. And sometimes the information that, let's say, that I share with someone else, that kind of like conflicts with their some very core beliefs that they have that have been programmed or conditioned into them, into their ideology of how they look at life, right? So I prefer to try to avoid confrontations, and with certain people who have really trespassed against me, unfortunately some of them are family, and that makes it more difficult, more challenging in terms of, do I allow them into my life again? It depends on what has happened, and it depends on their behaviors towards us, and it depends on whether they continue to disrespect or respect, and how much they actually value having a relationship with me, right? So with regards to people who are, let's say, very aggressive or who are violent, I have to say no, right?
I'm not going to let that, the reason I was upset to begin with, I'm not going to let that come in my life. You know, I'm not going to get it to there. But the person who did it, who knows where they're coming from too? Who knows? I never walked a day in their shoes, so I don't know. Maybe they're having an even worse day than I was. And we're fast forward, and now we're 10 years later, we're not friends anymore because of something silly, right? I wouldn't put myself in that situation again that I might get hurt. However, and because you can learn from those, but what I would say is that, you know, we can agree to disagree, but forgiveness is for me. It's really not to put you off the hook. It's for me. And that's the, you know, that's for me, forgive quickly. That's it. You know, like it's very simple. Forgive quickly, move on.
Whole.
Letting go and acknowledge that you can't control everything and how everybody feels or thinks about you.
Relief. That's the best word for me, relief.
Love.
Free.
You feel liberated.
It allows a bit of freedom for me. It allows me to be okay.
Forgive yourself and others no matter how hard it is. Forgiveness is healing for sure, but remember, forgiving does not mean that you have to rebuild the relationship or get into the same situation again. Because you are at peace, it doesn't mean that the person or the situation is no longer toxic. Set your boundaries firmly and be selfish when it comes to your own mental health. We have been influenced by so many factors during our lifetime, such as our culture, family beliefs and values, circle of friends, and etc. Personally, it took me a long time to understand what forgiveness really means. And this happened when I put all those mindsets aside and decided for myself what actions are in best interest of my mental and overall well-beings. Meaning, I have started to do not feel guilty when setting boundaries. I have started to forgive as fast as possible depending on the matter and situation, but I don't forget, so I won't put myself in the same situation again. Love and respect yourself first. We are first responsible towards ourselves, then others. What do you think? If you are interested to share with me your thoughts and experiences on this topic, DM me here.